listen to as much music as you can. Because if you're going to write about music, you can have your favorites, styles, I do, but you're not going to be sent only to pop rock shows. Some people like country, some people can't stand it. But you need to taste everything. So first of all, start tasting everything.
Howard, we have had so many different types of people that are involved in the music industry that we've interviewed. All very, very exciting. You come from a completely different angle. You really, really do, because as a music critic, going to concerts and meeting people, and the amount of musicians that you have met and talked to and interviewed, from Carly Simon to Robert Plant to Taylor Swift to Sinatra to Wynton Marsalis. That's a wide span of musical genres that it's exciting to hear about. So I want to find out. Now, I know your dad was a jazz musician.
Right.
So is that kind of where it started, where he played music for you?
I think music must have been in my DNA through Dad. This was before I was born, but he had a group in Canada called the Harmonaires, and he was the leader, and he played trumpet and sax and clarinet, and he kept these instruments when we moved to this country. And back in the day, he would compete in contests, and he was supposedly quite good.
Yeah.
But in those days, you didn't always make records and make a name for yourself in that way. And he was married at the time to his first wife, who wanted the normal husband, not the traveling musician, you know, and just, it didn't work. It kind of killed the dream. But Daddy bought me my first stereo when I was a kid, a Capehart turntable. It was pretty good, you know, to my ears now. I think back on those old 45s I used to listen to on there, and what he would do, he'd come in the room, I would buy a new 45, and I'd be all excited. Daddy, look, I just got this new record. It's You're So Vain. It's new, you know, that song I keep hearing on the radio all the time. Well, look, I got the record. You want to hear it with me? So he'd be like, great. He'd go and grab his trumpet, and I'd be playing it, and he'd come in the room and he would start playing along. And he'd find the groove and find himself in the pocket there, and he would play. And so it became kind of fun for me to get these records and to share them.
Yeah.
There was no generation gap with both my parents. They you know how you're supposed to like your own music and not your parents' music because it's not cool? I grew up in an era where everything was played on the radio. There wasn't that fragmented, one company owns everything and we'll only play country here and we'll only play rock here. I grew up in the glory days of pop radio, AM radio. Beautiful. At first, where I heard a Carpenter song, easy listening, followed by Grand Funk hard rock, made here in Miami. We're an American band. Followed by The Temptations, Papa Was a Rolling Stone, classic soul. Followed by Gladys Knight. Followed by Charlie Rich's Most Beautiful Girl. You know,
what a cross structure of music,
so that's what I'm exposed to. So here I am, I'm hearing these songs I like on the radio. I use my allowance, which was 50 cents a week, you know, a whopping 50 cents. So you'd have to be smart and find where you could buy records that were, you know, affordable. So there was a Sears, and records were 69 cents for a 45. Can you believe that? It's cheaper than iTunes today.
Absolutely.
Right? So I get that.
What a
start
bargain.
getting albums. Start reading the liner notes. Start calling both parents in the room and say, I got this, you want to hear it? And so it was a positive experience. It was a sharing experience. It made me want to have some kind of, I didn't use the word career then as an 8-9-year-old boy, but I saw the words produced by Richard Perry on my first record. My first purchase and my favorite song to this day was Carly Simon's You're So Vain.
Wow.
This is morbid, but it's what I would want to be buried with if I was to be that original 45.
What an emotional connection you have with that, absolutely.
Oh, totally. And I would look at the record and it said produced Richard Perry, so I'd ask Daddy, what does produced mean? And he would explain it. Her next 45 had the word mono on it, whereas the other one had stereo.
Yes.
Okay,
yes,
but
yes.
the right thing to do was mono. Well, why is this one? And it's in big letters. Yeah. I knew what stereo was. It was 2 speakers because it's what I had on that turntable. What is mono? He explained that. Then I found out. I asked, well, why would one be one channel and the other's stereo? And then I learned that, well, in those days for AM radio, it was mixed to be in the dominant format.
Exactly right, yeah.
So I'm learning that kind of stuff. I'm learning what does engineer mean? I know what an engineer is on roads,
interesting. So you're
but you see
this
those
up.
words.
Yeah, you're picking this up as you're going along.
All the names of the various instruments.
Yeah.
What's that one sound like? And I'd ask, so what's a mellotron? What's a mandolin, and what's the difference between that and a guitar? it says here that this guy plays a mandolin and this one plays electric guitar and this one plays acoustic. What's
So
the
you're
difference?
getting this behind the scenes information of this litany of terminology, which is what this is, that's building your future foundation for what you're involved with now.
Yeah,
That's incredible.
Yep, I can talk to those kind of things. And then vocabulary. Why did the artist say something in such a way? And why did it speak to me? And I mentioned Carly before, and I said she's why I'm who I am. Well, two people, two extraneous people, not counting my parents, but Carly Simon and Stan Lee of Marvel Comics gave me my voice. Carly Simon, because she would use words that you never really heard before. Your scarf, it was apricot. You watch yourself, gavotte. Your hat strategically in a pop song was strategically. Another song had nonchalantly, these big words. And to an 8-year-old, 9-year-old boy who hadn't heard all these words, it was kind of cool. And then she would write songs about being a misfit. And you know how you never fit in, really? Yeah. If you're being honest, and especially if you're a creative person, you're different.
Yeah.
You know? So I always felt different in some way. And she had a song called Misfit. When you're, it's hip to be a misfit when you're young and intellectual, and in a bit you'll admit you're a misfit. And it's all about just not fitting in.
Interesting.
And I was about 10 and a half when that song came out on her Hotcakes album. And I says, wow, I get this. Even at that young age, I kind of gravitated.
You related to it big time, absolutely.
Big time, and it stayed with me, and it showed me the power of language in a pop music song. You could use certain words. Sometimes it was just for phrasing. Sometimes they're placeholder words, but sometimes they carry a lot of meaning, and they can be used in your own life, and you don't feel so alone.
So you're getting this structure of lyrics, of liner note information. You're asking questions to your dad as far as terminology, what's happening. Without you realizing it, you were creating this incredible university of knowledge that has guided you along the way in your career now in writing as a critic.
It helps you speak to musicians. I don't read or write music, and what's incredible is some of our greatest composers in popular music don't read or write music. I believe Barry Gibb doesn't read or write music.
Interesting, yeah.
But look at the melodies he and his late brothers came up with, right?
Brilliant melodies.
The Beatles, right? McCartney, I don't think they read traditional music to my knowledge.
They didn't. They understood some chord changes of what it was, but again, what they were able to piece together is sheer brilliance.
And in not knowing the rules necessarily, they were able to break them and make a sound that you may not have thought. If you were so bound by the laws, you know. So anyway, so I came to that, and I was gathering all that information, and in my head, I was remixing them, and I didn't use that word back then. But I was like, I love the drum sound on, well, we'll go back to your Sylvain. I love the drum sound on that. Who played that? And so I looked it up, and I saw the name, and it was Jim Gordon, who had a wild history, so to speak, which you found out later.
Right.
But I looked at that, and I loved the crack of the drum and how it was mixed up front. So I'd listen to some other people's records, and I'd hear it, and I'd say, oh, that would sound so much better if you brought that up. In my head then, it was just, or the vocals getting a little lost. I'd love to hear it with a little more clarity or a little more air around the other instruments. You're getting lost here a little.
So you're starting to step into the mixing and the producing at that young, and hearing inside the song how the lyrics are matching the music, how the feeling of the song is being delivered. Well, that's really, really amazing. That really is absolutely amazing.
As like a real little kid.
Yeah.
And so you know, people ask, did you play an instrument? And I'd say no, but I guess I played records before there was such a thing as DJs. Yeah. Right?
Absolutely.
And now they get paid a fortune to perform.
So Carly Simon was that first you know, beginning of your analyzing of all this here. Who was your next concert that you went to that you became aware of? Who was your first concert?
My very first concert was Fleetwood Mac, the Tusk tour at the old Hollywood Sportatorium, August 6, 1980. And the ticket was $12.50. I remember all this. I remember things. I could tell you where the album peaked at number 4, 1979. See, I know. I just know this.
Why certain details are with us is kind of
why
amazing.
They stay. But that was my first real concert. I was a swimmer at the University of Miami on the age group team, and the pool was right near the patio where they would have artists come and perform. So I would see some of them rehearsing beforehand. Carla Bonoff was one. I think Jimmy Buffett was one when he was starting out, kind of. Got some other young acts, but I don't count that as my first concert where you actually got a ticket and you went to a venue to see. Right. So Fleetwood Mac was, and they speak to me. I told you about Carly, but their music, I mean, look at the interpersonal relationships there.
Absolutely.
And how coming, as I did, from a split house, my parents divorced.
Yeah.
So I felt different there too. Now it's common. But in the 70s, none of my friends' parents were divorced.
Yeah.
None. And now most all of them have caught up. So they're,
You were ahead of the curve.
But I was ahead of the curve. And here's this group where the two songwriting couples in this group and musicians are split, and they're writing songs as a dialogue back and forth to each other. And the hell it is to have to be in the room with your ex, but for the greater good. The greater good is creating this art.
Yeah.
It's their job. They're signed to do it. They have to do it, but they also have this creative urge. And they're turning all that pain and turmoil and all that and anger and love that
absolutely.
Remains into art. Oh, that spoke to me so much.
Stevie Nicks is just such a fantastic singer, and I'm a fan of Mick Fleetwood, who's another phenomenal drummer.
My favorite drummer.
Yeah.
Okay. My favorite overall drummer, because I mean he has a sound you just hear it. The drumming on the Tusk album. Oh, there's a few. And if we're going to talk pop and rock drummers, I mean I love the sound of drums. I mentioned Jim Gordon on You're So Vain, but I'm going to say Mick Fleetwood's sound on the Tusk album. That solid thwack, and I mean then there was Steve Gadd and on Paul Simon's records and on Carly's records, and he did a jazz solo on the first jazz solo I heard was on her Spy album in '79.
Oh, interesting.
The closing track was called Memorial Day. It was an 8-minute tone poem, I guess you would call it. It was a very unusual song, and it concluded with a minute and a half. No, it was longer than a minute. It was about a minute and a half or so drum solo by Steve Gadd on a pop record. So all these drums, we're going off the drums, but
it's amazing.
But the concert, getting back to the concert, to see it live, to hear those sounds, see the group live performing it and everything, it was a thrill.
Well,
it was neat.
The pop band, you talked about Robert Plant and Jimmy Page. What was that like to?
That was really interesting. Look, I always liked Led Zeppelin.
Yeah.
They were cool. I never got to see them because they split before I started to go to concerts. Yeah. Because the first concert was 1980. I was 17, so they were gone. That concert I expected to like. I thought that their reunion album, the two of them did No Quarter, where they worked with Egyptian musicians and this world music sounds and everything. I thought it was so majestic and it sounded really cool. But in concert, I'm sitting there now. I was there for work to review. Now, some concerts I was glad to get to go to, that being one of them.
What you say for work? That's so interesting.
Because I was there to review.
There for work.
Yes, yeah. And so that one didn't feel like work. Some felt like work, okay? Some felt like work. That one, I'm assigned, I'm going to review Jimmy Page, Robert Plant. Yay, how cool, right? So I'm sitting there watching it, and it was so majestic, and the sound was so big and special and rich and enveloping. I hate to use the word almost that it was transporting, because that almost sounds cliche or something like that, or you may have heard it, but music kind of takes you out of your skin.
Absolutely. And
you go up somewhere.
It's that out-of-body experience.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah.
I'm watching it, and I'm like, I'm in the Miami arena with 12,000 people all around me, 12,000 strangers, and I'm lifted up by that.
This is the power of music.
That's the power of music. And then I got to be on stage once with Bon Jovi for a review, and I did it as a little different.
Bon Jovi, he's great.
I'm not a big fan. Sorry. I'm not a big fan. I liked some of the stuff, but I'm on stage with them because they'd had this special arrangement where they had a fan promo thing where they created like a bar on the stage. And they'd shift fans in groups onto the stage to watch from the perspective. Standing right behind John and Richie on guitar, and you're standing like where you are. I'm standing right behind here, and you see the interchange with the exchange with the crowd. Yeah. Oh, it's heady.
Yeah.
He points, the whole crowd points. It's like, wow, the power. I see why you do that. It's this.
There is this.
It's a drug. It's illegal. It's a legal drug.
Absolutely, it is a drug. But there's a certain sense of responsibility that comes with that drug, because when you can take 12, 50,000 people and unite them, and bring them to one event of that port, and control them to a degree in a positive way. There's a real high that comes with that. Absolutely.
There really is, and I got to give him credit. He did.
Yeah.
He did, and there's other acts that connect. See, that's important to me.
Yeah.
Can you connect to an audience? I came up in an era where you had to learn your craft on stage first. Tony Bennett had told me, but he's also told other people, that it takes about 10 years to get mediocre before you're going to get good. You got to keep doing it. MTV, God bless MTV. I had fun in the 80s watching it. I really did. But it allowed you entree onto the pop stage without necessarily having the craft.
Before those 10 years,
Before those 10 years. Later after that, it got a little even worse. American Idol. And look, I'm as guilty as any. I had a column of Idol Watch. I evaluated it every week. But it said to you, you could be an instant star right away, but where are those performing chops? So I'm thinking of people who really spoke to me in concert and have the skill to hold an audience enthralled, not just with the music, but with the way they can converse with you. An Elton John. He's always been, Elton John, and he's got a terrific band. I mean, you talk Nigel Olsson on drums.
Absolutely, Nigel.
Is there a better David
Johnston
on guitar, and he's played with Stevie too on Belladonna. But have you ever heard a drum sound like Nigel and producer Gus Dudgeon got on Captain Fantastic?
Nigel has a whole different approach.
Right.
To even how he likes the drums a little thinner.
Right.
And how the drums are made to get a sound that he hears.
Right.
That no one else hears.
Yeah. Gus managed to mic it right and produce it in such a way. I have never heard a pop record with, in my view and my taste, a better drum sound than Captain Fantastic. It's just wonderful. But that whole, how it speaks to your soul, and then connecting with you personally on stage.
What was it like? Because you also got involved in Jazz 101. You were involved in I mean, your span of what you have, Howard, is so impressive. I mean, you talk about Wynton Marsalis or people like that you've experienced and listened to. What was that like to step into the jazz world?
Well, it was interesting. In the late 90s, pop was kind of moving toward the Britney Spears kind of thing, performance art again, performance craft. And I'd seen too many concerts where there'd be lip syncing going on. And it was all about the dancing. And it was about taking breaks. When you're doing an hour and a half show or something, you're taking a break. Whereas I saw Tina Turner 2 months before that, and she was at the time, I guess in her 60s, something like that.
Late 60s.
Late 60s at the time. And here she's doing a 2.5 hour show on high heels with a hand mic, let alone not one of the little thing, and walking on a catwalk with this and doing that energy thing. And so I'm watching
break.
And I'm watching some of the younger ones who are lip syncing or doing all these skits, and I started to get a little discouraged with pop for a while. So I kind of went to the roots that are buried deep in because of the influence from my parents, from dad and everything. Jazz. What say I try to get into writing about jazz authoritatively. But this means doing some more homework, because I knew the musicians who, David Sanborn and the Brecker brothers and Steve Gadd and all these New York musicians who played on pop records, on Carly's records and on Paul Simon's records and on Joni Mitchell's records and even on some of the Bee Gees records. I mean, they would use some of these top jazz musicians who I had learned through reading the liner notes are jazz musicians too, but they make a living playing on pop records. So it got me interested, and I said, I want to write a bi-weekly column. We'll call it Jazz 101, because I'm going to learn along with you. I'm going to talk to these creators the same way that I talk to the pop people, to what makes you tick. And I'm going to learn, and then I will use my writing skill to convey it.
Fantastic.
And hopefully find an audience and see what the commonalities are and share the stories. And it was fun for a long while.
Fantastic.
And I'll tell you, it made me feel so good. One of the first, if not the first, major jazz artist I got to speak to was Grover Washington Jr. God bless him. He's passed, but he was a lovely man. And I was nervous going into this interview, because I'd come from talking to Metallica's drummer Lars Ulrich. That's a different dialogue.
Lars, absolutely.
The Spin Doctors at the time, one of the Nirvana guys at the time, one of the Pearl Jam guy at the time. Now we're going to go early '90s into jazz, a serious art form. And I've got to hold my own with this guy. Am I going to sound like an idiot? Am I going to ask the wrong questions?
You were nervous.
I was a little nervous. Yeah. But I found one thing that works well is to get in a conversation with people.
Yeah.
Don't be so wed to the questions you want to ask necessarily. Sketch some out.
Right.
Sketch them out.
Right.
But if I'm talking to you and you say something, but I know my next question is here, and you said something that intrigued me, I'd be foolish as a conversationalist and as a writer to let that go by, because I have to get to number C now. Number C and then D. So it's like, you said something great, but I didn't really pay attention.
Absolutely.
I'm going to do this. I guess I didn't do that. I mean, I guess I didn't do I got to go to A, B, C, D. I went, and he said at the end, he goes, Howard, that was such a refreshing interview. I really liked talking to you. You had such good questions.
How beautiful.
Oh, I was on a high the rest of that day. I was like,
Well, it sounds like what you did, which is so powerful, that I want this next generation to hear about, is that you were in the moment.
Yes.
You were in the now, in the moment, speaking to them at that moment.
Yeah.
And even though you had a guideline of questions that you wanted, the moment was more important than those questions.
Yes.
That's beautiful.
Go for it. That's a gift. It's like a songwriter will say, it was just inspired. It came to me. It just like came to me, and I was just the conduit to get it out. A songwriter will tell you, because they didn't run from that, whatever it is, mystical or whatever. They didn't run from that thing. If you want to one day be a writer, and you want to write about music, and you want to talk to these people, don't run from your the instinct and where you're going with that conversation. It may really give you something. And there's, as a writer of arts stories, music, and sometimes theater and other things, it's great when you're in a conversation and you hear something they say, you're like, oh, that sounds so good. I got my lead now.
Yeah.
I got the story.
But that's, you got to be, again, in that moment, you have to have an open mind. You have to have high level of listening skills.
Yeah.
Which is really what a great musician does in that moment. So it seems like you have all of those musician skills.
I think so.
You just put it to pen.
Right? That's right. And that's true, right? A musician has to listen to his fellow musicians, his or her fellow musicians. And when you sing and you're harmonizing, there's a way to do it. So it's the same in having a conversation.
Absolutely. It's kind of interesting, because when I think about all the different people that you've had here, the Bee Gees. I mean, what was it like to talk to them? And
it was just too cool, because when I was also coming up, the Bee Gees were the Bee Gees. They were huge. You couldn't escape it. And driving to morning practice from Miami Beach to University of Miami and the Gables on the radio, Saturday Night Fever hits. It was like every 2 seconds, on the radio. My dad's friend was a Miami Beach doctor. And he was one of the Bee Gees doctors. And as a kid, I was like, oh, I'd love to meet these people. But I asked Dr. Carlton, is there a way I could, what are they like? What are they like? I'd like to meet them. And it didn't happen then, but it happened later. And to see the three personalities of the brothers, they were all different.
Yeah.
They were very different. How they would play off each other, how they'd finish each other's sentences, the sense of humor. Oh, I miss Morris like you wouldn't believe. We actually became friendly, very friendly.
Wow.
And he asked me to play paintball with him, because that was his passion toward the end of his life, paintball. Loved it. I had never played, but I would see him. He would eat at Jimmy's Diner down the street on Biscayne, and I'd have breakfast with him sometimes, and he'd say, Howard, I'd love you to come play paintball with me. And I says, okay, cool. And well, the sad thing here is I got the flu a week later, and so it was on the weekend we were to go. Well, sadly, there was never another weekend, because he passed soon after. So I feel so bad. But I got to meet these people and engage with them in a conversation, tell their story, because I've written about them countless times, tell their story, see how they work, got to hang out with them on a film set on the beach. They were doing a video for a song called I Could Not Love You More from the Still Waters album in '97.
Wow.
And it was a comeback. It was an attempted comeback album, and it actually did well for them. They changed their image for that record. Black suits instead of the white suits.
Yeah.
And that was by design.
Yeah.
By design. They worked with Arif Mardin again on some tracks, and some other people they had worked with before. And to spend the night on the film set with them and watch all the things that could go wrong and how they got around it. Driving back in Barry's, I think he had a Range Rover at the time. So we're going from 14th Street in Miami Beach down to the studio, Middle Ear Studio, which was off the Venetian Causeway. Their studio. They don't have anymore, but they had the studio there. So we're driving back. It's just an anecdote, but it was just funny. It just showed how human and they are. His car, it was sluggish, driving back, and we're driving. It's just sluggish, and I'm sitting in the front seat with him, and I think John Merchant was in the back seat. That was his sound guy, And but something's wrong. He kept saying something's wrong with the car. As soon as he pulled in, to the parking lot at Studio, he realized he had it in the wrong gear the whole way. So he starts laughing, and he's embarrassed because here I'm a member of the press sitting right next to him, and he goes, I'm going to read this in the story, aren't I?
And he did.
He did. It gave me a kicker. It gave me my kicker.
Oh, that's
you want a lead,
hysterical.
you want a kicker. I got a kicker. Barry
that's
Gibbs driving in the wrong gear and everything.
brilliant.
It was hilarious. And he liked it.
Taylor Swift. Tell me about Taylor Swift and what you've observed from her. I mean, this is this incredible talent that is out there now.
You're right.
What have you observed with her?
There is talent out there now. I don't want to sound fusty, and I'm talking about a lot of the people I grew up with, but there is some talent here, and I am so impressed with her. I spoke to her when she was 18, the first time when she was 18.
Wow.
I was so impressed with her as a human being, the way she held a conversation, the way she was in control of her life at such a young age, but so in touch with her audience too. She wasn't above it. She was writing to a very specific audience, her age.
Yeah.
She wasn't trying to be, a 15-year-old singing the Dreamgirls song, and I am telling you I'm not going.
Right.
Because she hadn't lived and experienced that.
Right,
So
right.
she was able to do that. But she was so in control. She had control over every image that went out on her. She had approval on. All kinds of things you don't really hear of an artist. So as a youngster, I was impressed. As a youngster, I was impressed with her in that way as someone. Let's make a connection and have a conversation here.
Yeah.
I wasn't a huge fan of her music at first. I respected her more than I liked the music. Yeah. But she kept evolving. And I saw her last 3 tours, and 2 of them were in an arena, sold out, of course.
Yeah. And
she was terrific. It was a fun show. The arena shows, they were a heck of a lot of fun. They were colorful, and the way she engaged the audience was peerless. It was as if she's an old soul who really knows how to hold an audience in her hand in an arena. Okay, but here's the test. For her Reputation tour last year, it was a stadium tour. Now, you think of Stadium Acts, you think the Rolling Stones, Pink Floyd, the Eagles did a stadium show.
Large
U2, did I mention U2? They do stadium shows. Very difficult, because first of all, you're not in a music venue, you're in a football stadium.
Yeah.
You're in seat 1 of 75,000. You're way in the bull there. How does that performer reach me up here?
Yeah.
Most can't do it.
Yeah.
The Stones can.
Yeah.
They've been performing since, soon after Jesus, right? They learned.
They've got the experience.
They've got the experience. They got the Tony Bennett 10 years of training thing going on. But Taylor Swift, here she is in her late 20s now, 28, 29 last year, something like that.
Yeah.
I'm watching, and the way she's talking to the audience, there was nothing contrived about it. There was nothing calculated, and if it was, she's a hell of an actress, because it felt genuine. And I don't remember the exact words she was saying to the audience, but I felt she was talking to me.
How beautiful.
And I could see the reaction, and you could see the hold that she had on these people, and I was like, wow, that skill is not dead.
Yeah.
It exists, maybe not in all of them, but it exists here, and that gives me encouragement.
Oh, a sense of great hope, absolutely.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see where she's at in 10 years.
Right.
And how she's evolved at that time.
Right.
We have so many younger people that watch these interviews, and from all around the world. It's really amazing in over 60 countries.
Right.
What would you say to this next generation? In closing, what advice would you give to this next generation that maybe has the desire to want to write and follow in a path that you've, a path that you've opened up the doors for? What kind of guidance would you give them?
One thing I would say is listen to as much music as you can, because if you're going to write about music, you can have your favorites styles. I do. Yeah. Look, we all come from something. I grew up in pop rock. I love pop rock. But you're not going to be sent only to pop rock shows. If you're a hip hop kid, you're not only going to be able to be conversant in that. You don't have to love everything and have it hit you emotionally, because how can it? Some people like country. Some people can't stand it. Some like chocolate. Some like vanilla. But you need to taste everything. So first of all, start tasting everything. Try to understand what makes a particular genre work. How is it reaching its audience? What does the performer have to do in that style to get to an audience? Does it speak to you? Is it speaking to you? And if so, why? Try to figure that out. So first, exposure. Listen to everything. Keep an open mind. Read. Read other critics. read other music publications, read about how music is described. It's difficult.
Yeah.
It's difficult. You're not there to just say, oh, I like it, it was the greatest thing I ever saw, or this was the worst thing I ever saw. You're not there also to attack a person personally.
Yeah.
You know, that's not what you're there to do. You're really there kind of to analyze it and to see how well they put across what they're trying to do. And if you have any connection with the artist,
Absolutely.
you could kind of see, oh, they were coasting a little bit on this one.
Yeah, you'll notice it.
You'll notice it.
Yeah.
Or on this one, wow, they were really inspired. They were really inspired. I've seen some of my favorites be on both ends.
Yeah.
Elton John, he's always very good.
Yeah.
He's always very good. But I've seen a couple shows where you could tell he was, you know, he had his hits he had to do and he was doing them, and the crowd loved it and everything, but there was just a bit off.
Yeah.
I'd seen him enough to know that.
Yeah.
And I was able to say that and to say why. You may not agree with me. When you read me, I'm going to get to the part about having a thick skin.
Yeah.
You may not agree with me, but you're going to know why I said it.
Right,
I will explain it's almost like being in a court before the judge or something. I will explain my case. Then I saw him on his recent tour a couple months ago, his farewell tour, and he was just transcendent too. Just like the Robert Plant show I told you about, it was transcendent. It was. Yeah. He was having a good time, and you could tell.
Yeah.
You could tell, and the band was great, and the visuals, everything worked. The other thing I would tell, and I just said it, is have a thick skin.
Yeah.
If you can dish it, they're going to dish back.
Yeah, they're going to come back at you.
And it's a lot worse now. When I started 29 years ago, the internet wasn't a thing.
Yeah.
So when you got mad at me, you had to take it upon yourself to write a letter, to take a piece of paper and write down all the things you don't like about me, stamp it, and mail it. It's kind of more personal. Now, email. You can hit me like right away.
You can post it now on social media. You can hit it in many different ways.
Social media, right. And they will, when I told you why I started the jazz column for a while, when I was like getting turned off by the Britneyization of the pop thing, nothing scorned like a Britney fan, at least in 1999 and 2000. Yeah. And that's when the internet was starting to come around, and you would have little, 12, 13, 14-year-olds saying F you. It's like, wow. Look, I don't take it personally.
Yeah.
I want you to like what I like.
Yeah.
I do. I am not one, and I guess I'll say this as advice. Music is to be shared. So you're not cool if you like something no one else likes. You know what I mean? I don't know if I'm even saying it right, but it's what you should do to shed light on stuff people don't know about. That is part of your job.
Yeah.
To go and find what they don't know and share it and say, hey, I just discovered something. This lady here in this back room at this little club, oh my God, she has a voice like Streisand. She has the performing chops like her. Yeah. You need to go see this. That's a treat to get to tell people.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you also have to write about the mega stars, because they're charging a ticket. They're charging a heady price for a ticket. They owe to their fans to deliver the best show they can. Yeah. They're human beings. Yeah. They may feel sick one night and may not be able to deliver the best, but they owe to try. They owe to try, and you're going to evaluate that. But don't be above it all. Oh, I can't write about this. It's pop. It's No, it's music. It's good, great bad, advice. Or mediocre.
Yeah, great advice. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Great advice. Well, there's a book here at some point. Passing through the portals of great music legends.
Right.
These legends that you have had a chance to meet. There really is some stories there that you may have to now start penning that book and put that together and make this happen.
I would love. I mean, to tell the story of how Stevie Nicks had to record the last Fleetwood Mac album in the bedroom studio. Converted studio in the bedroom of her ex-boyfriend while his living girlfriend is there, and the hell of that. After coming out of rehab, so you're tender from having come out of rehab. Woo. Your ex-boyfriend is your producer, and his girlfriend is there, and you're in their bedroom in their house trying to sing these personal songs. She regaled me with stories on that. It was great.
Well, there are some fantastic stories.
I'd love to tell you that. I'd love to tell about I got Barbra Streisand on the phone. Who does that?
Yeah.
The woman doesn't do interviews.
Yeah.
I was the only one, as far as I know, and I looked this up, I was the only one at the Herald to ever get her in a one-on-one interview, because she hadn't played Miami since 1962 or 3, early 63. I got her. And to hold my own and to tell you how that was with a star like that. When you hear all these stories, I talked to Barry Gibb about her too, because he had done that wonderful album Guilty with her, 2 albums with her.
Yeah.
And I talked to him about her and got a quote from him for that story, and then shared story of what he said with her in our conversation, and that was a thrill to put those pieces together. To hold your own with her, no, she was easy to hold your own because she was so engaged. She started asking you questions about Miami, about the city, about things and everything. She's so tuned in.
She's such a deep artist.
Exactly.
With many of those 10 years of mediocre talent that she groomed to such a high level. But it's incredible that you've...
But to get to, I would, it's a discipline. To write the book, it means, sit down and do it, and I really ought to, because there's a lot
your time
to say.
has come for sure. Well, the advice you've given in this interview is absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much, Herald, on behalf of the sessions.
This is
You've
great.
done great.
So much fun. Thank you.
Dom Famularo here, the Sessions panel. This is so exciting. Thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. Click the subscribe button to be a part of what we're doing. The views help us tremendously. All of your comments, we read them and react to them. This is incredible. The support you're giving us is great. The Sessions panel. We'll see you real soon.